By the time the doors of the Hargrove Grand closed behind her, Wren Easley had already decided she wasn't going to say a word. Not to the manager who had looked her up and down like she was something that had wandered in off the street. Not to the woman at the front desk who had smiled at the couple ahead of her. White, linen suits, rolling luggage with European tags, and then let that smile fade the moment Wren stepped forward. Not to the security guard who had been called over for no reason other than that she existed in that lobby, in those clothes, with that face. She wasn't going to say a word, she was just going to remember. The morning had started the way most of her mornings started when she was traveling alone, quietly, without ceremony. Wren had flown in from Seattle the night before, a red-eye, no first class because the assistant who booked it had misread the calendar and she'd arrived to find the upgrade waitlist closed. She didn't make a fuss. She took her middle seat in row 22, tucked her knees sideways, and spent most of the flight reading a contract proposal on her phone, with the screen dimmed so she wouldn't disturb the man sleeping beside her. She landed at 6:47 in the morning. Her bag was a soft-sided duffel she'd had since her 20s, dark olive green. One of the handles repaired with electrical tape because she hadn't gotten around to replacing it. She wore jeans, broken in and faded at the knees, a black turtleneck, clean sneakers, but nothing with a logo worth recognizing. Her hair azul, pulled back loosely, the way she wore it when no one was watching. Nobody was watching. That was usually the point. The Hargrove Grand was in the business district downtown, 42 floors, a lobby with a ceiling that reached up like it was trying to escape the building. She had stayed here once, 7 years ago, at a conference where she'd sat in the back of the room and taken notes on a legal pad while the panel on stage talked about the future of financial technology without once mentioning a single company founded by a black woman. She had built one by then. It wasn't famous yet. Now it was worth $4.3 billion. But she was still wearing the same kind of jeans. She walked in through the main entrance at 7:15, duffel over one shoulder, coffee from the cart outside, still in her hand. The lobby was already moving, bellhops crossing with luggage, a cluster of suited men near the elevator bank, a woman in heels clicking toward the concierge. Wren moved through it easily, the way she always moved through spaces that weren't designed with her in mind. She was halfway to the front desk when someone stepped into her path. Not accidentally. The man was tall, somewhere in his mid-40s, with the particular bearing of someone who had been given a little authority and had decided it was the same as a lot. His name tag said Fontaine, guest services manager. He was wearing a navy blazer and an expression that had probably never once been questioned. "Can I help you find something?" he said. Wren looked at him. "I'm checking in." "Checking in," he repeated, and there was something in the repetition. A fraction of a pause, a slight tilt of the head. That turned a simple phrase into a question about whether she belonged there at all. "Do you have a reservation?"
I do. Under what name?
Easily. He didn't move toward the desk. He didn't gesture for her to follow. He just looked at her for a moment longer than he needed to, and then he said, "I'll need to verify that with our FAR system, if you'll wait here." She waited. He walked not to the front desk, but to the side counter, where another staff member, young, new-looking, eyes that kept sliding toward Wren and then away, leaned in while Fontaine spoke. The two of them looked at a screen, then they looked at her, then back at the screen. She had learned a long time ago that there were two kinds of moments like this. There were the ones where the outcome was already decided and nothing she said would change it. And there were the ones where it could still go either way. She had learned to read the difference by the way people's shoulders sat, whether they were braced against her or just uncertain. Fontaine's shoulders were braced. He came back. "I'm not finding anything under Easley," he said. "Try the company name. It may be under Fenwick Holdings." He didn't write it down. "We're very near capacity this week," he said instead. "If you came in hoping to secure a walk-in room." "I'm not a walk-in," Wren said. Her voice was calm, the way very still water is calm. "I have a reservation. It was made 3 weeks ago. The confirmation number is in my email." I can pull it up. That would be helpful. She pulled up her phone, handed it to him. He looked at the screen with the expression of someone who had already decided what they were going to find before they looked. This is for a suite, he said. There was something almost amused in his voice. Not quite, but almost. Yes, she said. Our penthouse suites start at 2,200 a night. I'm aware. He handed back her phone. I'll still need to verify the reservation directly with our system. If you wouldn't mind waiting. He gestured toward the sitting area off to the left, the way you gesture at something you want to put out of the way. Ren didn't move. I'll wait here, she said. His jaw tightened. He turned and spoke quietly to the young man beside him. And the young man picked up the phone on the desk. A minute passed. 2. The security guard materialized near the entrance to the sitting area. Not approaching, just present, just visible, she noticed. She didn't react. What she did was take out her phone again and open a different app. She found the contact she needed and typed a short message. 4 words. When you have a minute. The response came in less than 30 seconds. What do you need? She typed. Nothing yet. Just documenting the morning. The young man put the phone down. He spoke to Fontaine. Fontaine came back, and this time there was a slight change in his face. Not an apology, not quite, but a door that had been closed now cracked open an inch. It appears we do have your reservation, he said. I know, Ren said. There was a system, I know. He set a room key packet on the counter. Your suite is on the 38th floor. If you need anything. I won't be needing anything from you specifically, she said. Thank you. She picked up the key. She picked up her duffel. She walked to the elevator bank without looking back. In the elevator, alone, she finally exhaled. She wasn't angry. She had stopped being angry about this particular kind of thing when she was 31 years old and a bank loan officer had told her, very kindly, that her business plan was ambitious. The word people use when they mean impossible. And she had walked out of that office and gone home and finished the plan herself and found 3 investors by the end of the month. Anger was expensive. It cost time, and it cost clarity, and it never changed anything on its own. What changed things was precision. She sat on the edge of the bed in the suite on the 38th floor, king bed, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city that made the whole morning feel like a joke. And she opened her laptop. She had a board call at 10, a lunch with her CFO at 12:30, a keynote at 3 that she hadn't finished writing. And somewhere in between all of that, she was going to have to decide what to do about the fact that the Hargrove Grand Hotel Group had just spent 20 minutes treating her like a woman who had wandered into a lobby that wasn't meant for her. She opened a new document. She started writing. The keynote was at the Meridian Center, 6 blocks away, and it was for a conference called Capital Forward. 3 days of panels and presentations for institutional investors and emerging tech founders. Ren had been asked to speak 18 months ago. She had agreed, and then agreed again when they moved the dates, and said nothing when they moved the venue, and said nothing again when she found out she'd been shifted from the closing keynote to a mid-afternoon slot on day 2, between a panel on hedge fund allocation and a networking happy hour. She noticed. She said nothing. She arrived at the Meridian at 2:15, her keynote still 3/4 finished on her laptop, the rest of it living in the part of her brain that didn't write things down until it was ready. She had changed into a charcoal blazer and pressed trousers in the hotel suite, but she still wore the sneakers. She always wore the sneakers. The conference organizer, a woman named Dix Holloway, who moved like every minute was already accounted for, met her in the green room and handed her a lanyard. "We're so glad you're here," Dix said. "We've got about 40 minutes. Do you need a mic check? Please? Water? Anything?" "I'm fine." Dix hesitated at the door. "I want to say, your session is sold out. Standing room, actually. We had to open the overflow room." Ren looked up. "We didn't advertise it widely," Dix said, a little quickly, like she was aware of how this sounded. "But word got around, especially after the Viridian acquisition." The Viridian acquisition had closed 11 days ago. $460 million in cash and stock, the largest sale of a black woman-founded tech company in the history of the industry. Ren had been in the middle of a grocery run when her attorney called to confirm the deal had signed. She had bought cereal and gone home and called her mother and then gone to sleep at 9:30 because she was tired and there was a board call in the morning. "All right," she said. I want you to know we're grateful." The room is genuinely excited. Ren looked at her for a moment. "How many of the other keynote speakers are staying at the Hargrove Grand?" Dix blinked. "I believe, most of them, yes. We have a block reserved." "Good," Ren said. "Thank you, Dix." She went to do the mic check. She did not talk about the Viridian acquisition in her keynote. She had been expected to. She knew. The room had arranged itself in anticipation of it, leaning forward a little in the way that audiences do when they think a headline is coming. But she didn't talk about the deal. She talked about the morning. Not the hotel, not Fontaine, not the security guard who had stood near the sitting area like a parenthetical. She talked about what it cost to wait, what it costs to stand at a counter and know you are being doubted and hold yourself completely still. She talked about a loan officer in 2009 and a pitch meeting in 2013 where the investor had laughed, actually laughed, at the number she put on the board. She talked about the particular exhaustion of moving through rooms that weren't built for you and choosing, every time, not to let the room define you. "I have walked into spaces my entire life," she said, "where someone looked at me and made a decision before I said a word. And every time I had a choice. I could spend my energy explaining myself, defending myself, making myself legible. Or I could spend that energy building something they'd have to reckon with eventually." The room was quiet, in the way that rooms get quiet when they're paying attention. "I chose the second thing," she said. "Not because I'm patient. I'm not particularly patient. But because I understood very early that dignity isn't something other people give you. It's something you keep, or you spend. And I wasn't going to spend mine on people who had already decided I wasn't worth listening to." She paused. "The thing about not being seen," she said, "is that it cuts both ways." She ended there. No big flourish. No closing line designed for applause. She just stepped back from the podium, and the room took a second, a full, held second, before it started to respond. It responded for a long time. The message from her attorney, Bren Colhoun, came in at 5:17 that afternoon, while Ren was still in the Meridian's green room taking a call with a journalist who'd been trying to schedule something for 3 weeks. She glanced at the screen. "Read the preview." She asked the journalist to hold on. She read it again. "Just got a call from Crawford Stiles. He's general counsel for Hartley Capital. They hold approximately 14% of the Hargrove Grand Hotel Group's parent company. He wanted to flag something before it became a larger issue. Are you available?" She typed back, "Give me 10. The journalist was patient. Ren finished the call quickly, promised a formal interview the following week, and called Bren. Bren Colhoun had been her attorney for 9 years. He had the voice of someone who'd heard everything and was surprised by very little. He was surprised by this. "Crawford Stiles called you directly?" Ren said. "Called the firm, actually, asked for me specifically." Bren paused. He had seen the keynote. It streamed. Apparently they were recording for the conference archive. Someone in the room posted a clip about an hour ago. The part about dignity. It's moving fast. Ren sat down on the green room couch. "He didn't use the hotel's name," Bren said, "but apparently several people in the room knew you were staying at the Hargrove. And the guest services manager on duty this morning has a reputation. Fontaine, you know him? I know his name tag." Bren made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "Stiles wants to know if you'd be willing to speak with someone from the hotel group's executive team. Tonight if possible." He described it as, his words, "a matter of urgent internal concern." Ren looked at the ceiling. The green room had a water stain up there, an old one, shaped a little like a map. "How much does Hartley Capital have in the hotel group?" she asked. 14% common stock. They also hold a seat on the advisory board. "And what does Hartley Capital have invested in my former holdings?" There was a pause. "Bren," she said, Roughly 60 million in secondary positions, he said. Before the Viridian close. Right, she said. So this is Crawford Styles calling, because he is very suddenly aware that a person his portfolio company embarrassed this morning is someone whose business decisions affect his returns. That would be my read. What does he want me to do? He didn't say explicitly. I think he wants you not to say the hotel's name publicly. Wren was quiet for a moment. Book me a call with Styles, she said. Tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock. Dunk? Done. And the hotel group? Tell them I'm not available tonight. The clip reached 4 million views by midnight. She knew because her phone wouldn't stop, and she finally turned it face down on the nightstand in the suite on the 38th floor and lay in the dark listening to the city below. Someone on the hotel's own social media account had posted a statement about our commitment to welcoming all guests, which had been screenshot and shared approximately as many times as the clip itself, with considerably less warmth. She hadn't posted anything. She hadn't named the hotel. She hadn't said a word publicly beyond the keynote. She didn't need to. The room had been full of people with phones. At 2 in the morning, she got up and made tea with the electric kettle on the counter by the window and looked out at the city. She had grown up 40 minutes from here, in a neighborhood where the grocery store closed at 8 and the buses ran every 45 minutes after dark. Her mother had worked the early shift at a hospital laundry for 11 years. Her father had not been around for most of that. She had done her homework on the kitchen table every night under a light that flickered when the heat came on, and she had been very good at math, and she had gotten a scholarship to a state school that wasn't her first choice, and she had taken it because it was what she had, and she had built the rest of it from there. $4.3 billion did not feel like a number that had anything to do with that kitchen table. And also it felt like exactly that. She drank her tea. She thought about Fontaine, not with anger, but with a kind of tired clarity. He had made a calculation this morning based on what he could see, and what he could see was a black woman in jeans with a second-hand bag. His calculation had been wrong. But it had also been, in some very ordinary way, exactly what she had expected. That was the part that was hardest to explain to people who hadn't lived it. Not that it happened, but that you expected it. And the expecting was its own kind of weight, separate from the thing itself. She wondered if he'd seen the clip. She decided it didn't matter either way. The call with Crawford Styles at 8 the next morning lasted 11 minutes. He was apologetic in the way that people are apologetic when they are mostly concerned about the cost of the thing that happened. He used the word unacceptable 3 times. He used the phrase doesn't reflect our values twice. He said deeply, before sorry, and also before committed. He had a particular rhythm to his contrition that suggested it had been drafted by someone else before he got on the phone. Wren listened to all of it. When he finished, she said, I appreciate you calling. Styles waited. I'm not interested in a public statement from the hotel group, she said. I'm not interested in a complimentary stay or a personal apology from their management team. I don't have any plans to name them publicly. She could hear him relax through the phone. What I am interested in, she said, is a conversation with the board of Hartley Capital about workforce culture initiatives in the hotel and hospitality portfolio. A pause. Specifically, she said, I'm interested in whether Hartley would consider anchoring a new fund I'm structuring, focused on equity-centered leadership development in service industry companies. The kind of training that might prevent the situation yesterday morning from becoming a situation at all. Another pause. Longer. That's, Styles said, and then stopped. That's not what I was expecting. I know, Wren said. How large a fund? We're looking at an initial raise of 90 million. We have 2 anchor commitments pending. We need a third. She let the silence sit. She had learned that from a negotiator she'd hired in the early days of the company. Let the silence sit. Because most people cannot stand it, and they will fill it with something useful. Styles filled it. Send me the prospectus, he said. The hotel staff member, not Fontaine, but the young man who had stood beside him at the desk, whose name turned out to be Kobe Marsh. left a note at the front desk that afternoon, addressed to the guest in Suite 3801. It was handwritten on hotel stationery and folded in half. It said, "I saw the video. I should have spoken up yesterday morning. I'm sorry I didn't." Wren read it twice. She set it on the window ledge beside the tea kettle and left it there. She thought about writing back, but she didn't. Some things didn't need a response. Some things just needed to be received. She checked out the following morning at 7:15 quietly, at the front desk with a different staff member entirely. Her duffel over her shoulder, coffee from the same street cart. The lobby was just starting to fill up, sunlight coming in at a low angle through the tall windows, the bellhops crossing back and forth in their familiar patterns. She walked through it the same way she had 2 mornings before, without hurrying, without looking like she was trying to prove anything. At the door, she stopped for a moment. Not long, just a beat, and looked back at the lobby. The ceiling that reached up like it was trying to escape, the polished floors, the people moving through it, all of them with their own weights and their own stories. All of them deciding, every moment, who they were going to be inside this space. She thought, I have been in this room. I know what this room cost. Then she walked out into the morning, and the city was loud and ordinary and entirely indifferent to what had happened inside. And she was fine with that. She had 3 calls before noon, a term sheet to review, a lunch with her mother, who would order the salmon and talk about her neighbor's garden and not mention the clip even though she had definitely seen it, because that was how her mother was. She let good things just be good, without ceremony. Wren raised her hand for a cab. She wasn't trembling. She never had been.